245. Leave it on the house.
I got this feeling when we came flying in this afternoon. It was so sunny, I thought we were gonna fry alive.
Hey everyone, this is Tommy Stewart Stazeski from the YouTube channel Tom Stewart Drums, and in this particular video, what I'm doing is taking an excerpt out of one of my other long-form videos, which was recently uploaded. It's called Got Musicians FOMO, which is basically just a video discussing how musicians in the scene sometimes may or may not have a fear of missing out on, they're looking at other band schedules and they're gigantic and they're, wow, I wish I was playing that much. And then the other side of that is the FOMO, fear of missing out of having personal life versus gigs. It's basically gigs versus, life balance. And so during the course of that video, I ended up talking about my experiences with playing shows in bigger venues, and in some instances they were venues that had stages that were, there's permanent stages in some of these venues, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I'm going to drop some fresh clips into this to freshen up the video just a little bit, but I got into the topic of standing on stages that famous bands have played on and how cool it is. And just for me personally, in my 40-year career of playing music, the times that has happened to me. And so yeah, this particular video I kind of took out of that long form video. If you want to see the whole long form video, there'll be a link at the end of this video to that. This one is going to be basically about some instances where I stood on stages, and one of them was the exact same stage that part of Kiss Alive was recorded in 1975 in July, and that is the Wildwood Convention Center. So we're going to get into that video right now. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, please subscribe and feel free to comment, and we'll see you soon. Those were really fun times. I'm really glad. I was 17, 18 years old, and that was me cutting my teeth on experiences like that and playing these places that were the stages that, like, all the bands that were just now like on MTV, Headbangers Ball, these hair bands, it's the stuff that the scene that I was into at the time. I was now playing all these places that these bands played or got their start. So as a kid, a teenager, that's freaking awesome. Like, I loved it. I thought I was just like really cool. Standing on a stage where other people have played, when you're that age, it's something that kind of goes through your mind. I remember my father's band, Cats, was rehearsing for the Van Halen tour.
Cellar Door Concerts presents Van Halen. Van Halen in concert at the Hollywood Auditorium tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Van Halen with high energy rock and roll. Tickets are $9, reserved plus a service fee. It includes parking. No cameras or recording devices are allowed in the Sportatorium. Come on out and rock to the sounds of Van Halen in concert with special guests, Cats, at the Hollywood Sportatorium tomorrow night at 8 p.m. All right, what are you talking about? It'll be night to remember. August 22nd, see the Kings in concert with Louisiana LaRue at the Sunrise Musical Theater. A Cellar Doors concert presentation.
The early part of 1980. This was probably, I was probably like May of 1980. And the Tower Theater in Upper Darby was closed for renovations. So the people that run the Tower Theater, that own it, was Electric Factory Concerts, and the owner, Larry Magid, managed my dad's band Cats. So everything was tied together, you know. So the Tower Theater was closed for renovation, so they put my dad's band Cats up into the Tower Theater to rehearse for the Van Halen tour for like 2 weeks to get them used to playing on a big stage in a big room like that. And I remember going there one afternoon to watch them rehearse, and I got to wander the Tower Theater. You know, this is in the afternoon on like a Sunday or something. And I'm wandering the backstage and the hallways, and I'm on the stage, you know, and off to the side of the stage there was this like panel that had all these backstage passes from all the artists that had played there previously. There was backstage passes for like Bowie and Genesis and Rush, Kiss, you know, whatever. And I'm just looking at this, and I'm 10 years old at the time. And I'm standing on this stage, and I don't think I knew at the time that Kiss had played there twice in '75 on the Alive tour, Dressed to Kill into Alive. In March and October of '75, they played there, headline. But I knew like Bowie had played there, and like Rush, Cheap Trick, and all these people. Van Halen with Journey and Montrose just a couple years before that in '78. Just only 2 years before that in '78, that Van Halen was on that stage opening for Montrose, who was opening for Journey. And so when you stand on a stage like that, you used to start thinking about the history behind it. It hits you, you know, and as a teenager, it hit me harder because I was able to grasp the concept of that, the enormity of that, and feel the energy from that a little bit more. You know, I did a record expo at the Wildwood Convention Center, the original one, before they knocked it down. And this was in late 80s, early 90s, maybe like 90, 91, I think, when I worked for a record store called Rock Dreams up in central North Jersey. And we would do these rock expos, and we did one at the Wildwood Convention Center. It's funny because the bass player from Blue Oyster Cult, Joe Bouchard, or was that the drummer? I can't remember, I'm drawing a blank. One of the Bouchard brothers, drummer and the bass player were brothers in that band. So the bass player was there selling stuff, selling albums and stuff, and I was talking to him for a little while before I even knew who he was. And he told me who he was. I'm like, wow. I'm like, oh, my dad's band opened for you guys at the Spectrum in October of '80 on the Cultosaurus Erectus tour. Like, it was one of the last gigs my dad's band did before they broke up as Cats in October of 1980. I was like, I was there, you know, and he's like, oh, wow, that's cool, kid. You know, it's just one of those interesting, the universe puts people together sometimes for reasons, and it's funny how that happens. And so anyway, the Wildwood Convention Center is where Kiss recorded most of the Alive album.
All right there, Wildwood! Yeah, you had a long way, but you've been real good. So if you want to party with the hottest rock and roll band in the world, you gotta party with Kiss!
The unreleased tracks are now on the Kiss Alive box set, which I did a long video on a few months ago when it came out. So I remember, you know, and it looks like a big giant high school gymnasium, but bigger. You know, it's a giant, like rectangular, squarish kind of room with like a wooden stage with, I just knocked my coffee over, with a wooden stage and, you know, curtains. You know, like you're looking at like a high school gymnasium stage. Curtains down the side and across the top. So I remember walking up onto that stage and just looking at the curtains and thinking to myself, well, these are the same curtains that were here the night Kiss played in the summer of '75. And I'm standing on the stage and like, Gene stood here and spit blood in this spot, you know, and this is where the flames went up during 100,000 years. And like, this is where, you know, they didn't use the Kiss logo that night, unfortunately, but I just remember, because I guess there's like a ton of pictures from that night. I'll drop a few of them in here in the video.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Yeah, yeah.
You could see the curtains on the side and stuff like that, and just like I remember these pictures of Ace Frehley in these old rock scene magazines back then, and you could see like the corner of like the drywall of like a wall behind him, and I'm like, it looks like he's playing, it looks like he's gigging in a fucking apartment. What is that? Turns out it was from Wildwood, because I've seen a bunch of photo shoots from the Wildwood show, and that Ace shot is from that night. So I remember just standing on that stage and just soaking it in and just thinking to myself, like, this is where fucking Kiss was in their Alive outfits in the summer of '75. They recorded most of what you hear on Alive was done in this room this night, and here I am standing on the same stage, looking out, you know, into the room, and just I don't know. There's just, if you're not a music geek or a musician, you don't. It means nothing to you. But for guys like me, it's huge. You know, it's like if you're like a Yankees fan or a Phillies fan, and you're like, you get to stand in the same spot that, you know, that they won the World Series, you know, however many times or whatever, and you just kind of like, you just soak that in. Or maybe you were at a place where the Beatles played, and you saw the Beatles, or you know, somebody you know saw the Beatles in a room, and you're like a Beatles guy, and you're standing in that room and knowing that those four guys played there. There's an energy that's there, and it's just, if you tap into it, you know, if you just really just take a minute to think about it. One other instance, while we're talking about standing on the stage that Kiss recorded Alive on, you know, a good portion of Kiss Alive from Wildwood '75. And we're talking, the reason that I bring this up and how cool it is because generally this doesn't happen. You don't really get a chance to stand on a stage that has a lot of history like that, unless it's a theater that's been around for a really long time. You know, most of these theaters that I ended up playing in these tribute bands are, you know, over 100 years old. They've been opened in like the 1920s and stuff, and sometimes older. Generally, when you're talking about stages, when a band comes through town and they're playing, you know, arenas, they're bringing their own stage. You know, their crew sets up the stage because it's a hockey arena or whatever, and then they break it down and they leave. So the only opportunity you really get to stand on a stage that has a lot of history behind it is if you're in one of these venues, which doesn't happen that often. There's a few, you know, Beacon Theater in New York is one of them. You know, they're scattered all over the country. But one of the ones that really stands out to me that I wish I could have had the opportunity to stand on the stage was the Detroit, Michigan Palace in Detroit, which is famously where Kiss shot the cover for Kiss Alive. You know, it was a stage shot. It wasn't really a live shot. They filmed the videos for Come On and Love Me and Rock and Roll All Night in the afternoon, the day before they played Cobo Hall in May of '75. I think the Cobo show was May 15th or May 16th. And so they spent the day before that at the Michigan Palace running through the show and filming it, and then filming, you know, the two promo videos for Dress to Kill. And then while they were there, Finn Costello did a photo shoot, and that's where they posed and did all these different crazy shots, and you see some really killer pictures from that photo session with the flame throwers going up and everything, which I am amazed it never ended up being used as a poster or anything like that. But you can Google, you know, Detroit, Michigan Palace, Kiss 1975, and you'll see a ton of pictures, all the outtakes from the live photo sessions and everything. But I can't imagine just being able to stand on that stage knowing that the cover of Kiss Alive was taken on that stage and they filmed those videos there. I mean, that would just be incredible. You know, it's kind of cool that I got to stand on the Wildwood stage, and be in that exact spot. But, you know, historically, the photo shoot for Kiss Alive is a pretty incredible moment in history. So I think that would really be you know, something amazing to have done. And also, I regret that I never got the opportunity to go out to Cobo Hall before they gutted it and redesigned it into like a convention hall. My goal was always to go to Cobo Hall and just see a show. Doesn't matter who it was, just anybody, and go up to the front and stand at the front of the stage and turn around and have somebody take a picture of me with the arena behind me, like the back cover of Kiss Alive. Like, I wanted to recreate that shot, but with me standing there. I mean, just how cool would that be? I'm so frustrated that I never managed to make that happen, because, you know, like most things, when these venues and buildings get demolished, that's it. I mean, it's part of history, never to be seen or repeated ever again. And either you jumped on it when you had a chance or you didn't. And unfortunately, I never jumped on the chance to go to Cobo and just to be in that arena with the history behind it. Not just Kiss, but all the other great things that have happened in there. The old, was it Big Time Wrestling, I think? It was the Sheik, the original Sheik, used to do wrestling shows there with Abdullah Butcher and Dusty Rhodes. There's a wrestling movie called I Like to Hurt People, which was from like '75. And most of it was filmed at Cobo during that heyday of like the old school wrestling. So there was just a lot that happened at Cobo Hall that I wish I could have just gotten into that arena at least once and just soaked in the energy and just looked around and just really taken it all in, but it wasn't meant to be. So. And on the subject of famous arenas, another one that I would like to eventually tick off the bucket list would be the Budokan in Japan. Just for Cheap Trick at Budokan and for the Kiss shows that they played there in '77, and the Beatles in '66. Just there's such a history in some of these buildings just to be in there. I don't care if I was going to a concert that I didn't care about, or like, you know, a tractor pull or a circus or something. I don't give a shit. I just want to be sitting in that building and just look around and just take it all in. And Budokan is another one of those buildings I would have really liked to have been able to do that. You know, there's just certain things in music history, you know, even like the LA Forum with Kiss Alive 2, and, you know, I'm trying to think of some other, Hammersmith Odeon in England, you know, the Marquee. When you really go down the line of rock and roll history, there are quite a few places that, you know, some of them don't exist anymore, but any that do exist, if I ever am in a particular city or a town where I know there's a legendary venue, I'm going to really try to figure out some sort of way to get in there and just, you know, manage to just kind of take it all in, like I said before. Because I feel like it's just important. It's, you know, it's historical, and to me, rock and roll history is a big deal. Besides regular history, of course. You know, I mean, I would like to go see, like, you know, the ruins in Italy, the Colosseum, and, you know, just Stonehenge, and just things that are historically, like, important and stuff like that. The pyramids, you know, is another thing. I don't like to fly. I haven't flown in a really, really long time. So these are things that I might hopefully end up getting to do when I'm retired, and I'll just have a little bit more ease of mind getting on an airplane and just doing this sort of stuff, because, you know, the clock's ticking. So there are a lot of things like that I just want to see at least once in my life. But again, the rock and roll history behind a lot of these buildings and landmarks and photo sessions, you know, I think it's really cool. Like, some Rush fans go up to Toronto and take pictures in front of the building that Moving Pictures was taken at. That's just cool stuff. You know, that's like living life and kind of integrating yourself and trying to pick up on some of that energy of these places that have a historical relevance in music history. So maybe one of these days it'll happen. We'll see. I don't know. Those kind of experiences are priceless. And so getting to play some places like that where, you know, people had played before you is a really cool thing. It's like one of those benchmark moments as a musician where you're like, oh, now I'm playing on the same stage as so-and-so played, you know, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And that's a cool thing when you were just a kid in your basement learning how to play albums with headphones on, and now you're doing that. Those are experiences that I'm really blessed and thankful that I had in the 40 years I've been gigging. I want to make sure that I credit some of these photos that I am dropping in on the Wildwood Kiss show were taken by a guy named Adam Ferrioli, who recently passed. And he is a drummer that has a history in the Philadelphia area. He, was in various cover bands and things like that. And then he ended up being a temporary drummer in Britny Fox right before they got signed to their record contract in I guess they got signed in 88. And he was their drummer, I think, from maybe late 86 into 1987, when their original drummer, Tony Destra, was killed in a car accident. Actually, the night that Britny Fox learned that they were getting a record contract, the story goes that he was so excited that he got in his car and he drove home, and he was driving fast. I don't know if he was drunk or anything. I haven't heard that, but he ended up dying in a car wreck that night, which is it's tragic. And he was a legendary drummer in the area, really awesome drummer. And he actually was in a band called Mad Hatter before that. This is in like 81, I guess, 81 into 82. There's like always these 6 degrees of separation with a lot of these musicians in this area. And he kind of actually has a 6 degrees of separation from my father, who I've mentioned in other videos and in this video as well. The band Cats that my father was the drummer in, that ended up getting signed to Elektra and putting out a record and did some shows locally at the Spectrum and opened for Van Halen for 2 months. And when that band self-destructed after the Van Halen tour, the singer ended up joining another band. The singer in Cats, his name was Michael Kor. And so there was a band called Mad Hatter that was forming in the area, and Tony Destra was their drummer. Their guitar player, a guy named Richie Mann, who was later on in local legends, the Dead End Kids, he was the guitar player, and he was, the guy that wrote, I think, the majority of the songs. But Michael brought in some of his own material, and they recorded some demos in 81 and 82, which I ended up getting copies of. And some of this stuff actually sounds like it could have ended up on a second Cats record had they had stayed together. Because Michael has a pretty distinctive writing style with, some of the things that he has done in Cats. And you can hear it in these demos. And I didn't realize this until I had ended up being in an Alice Cooper tribute band, Zillion Dollar Babies, with Richie a few years ago. And we were talking, and when he found out my father was in Cats, he was like, "Oh my God, I was in this band Mad Hatter," which was Michael from Cats. And he gave me a copy of the demos. It's just so weird how things that I never knew, and then here I am, I'm in my mid-50s, and I end up finding this out way later. This is 40 something years later. So anyway, Tony Destra was their drummer, and so he ended up in Britny Fox, and when he died in the car accident, Adam Ferrioli took his place and was in the band for, I guess, a year and a half. And I think I have some bootlegs of his tenure in that band. And he's another was another killer drummer. And I guess when they got their record contract, I don't know why he didn't stay in the band, but they ended up getting Johnny D, and then they released their debut record and everything. Adam went on to do some other stuff. He ended up actually in separate ways for a while. The Journey tribute band that I was just in for 4 years, he was their drummer for, I don't know how long it was, maybe a year or two, with some other guys that I played with, Paul and Vinny, who's in my Beatles tribute now, the Beatles solo tribute, Beyond Abbey Road. So again, it's all this cross-pollination going on. And Adam ended up, eventually, his claim to fame really ended up being, he ended up in Get the Lead Out, which is the premier Led Zeppelin tribute act that tours, the country, and is very, very successful. And he was their drummer, I don't know how long, I mean, probably 10 or 15 years at least. And then he recently passed from cancer. He was taking some time off and had some fill-in guys. So he has a YouTube channel, and I'll put the link down below to his channel, where he uploaded all of these Wildwood pictures of Kiss that he took himself, from like the front row. They're amazing shots. And unfortunately, Adam has passed, and so, but his YouTube channel is still active, and so I am using a lot of his photos in this video, and I wanted to make sure that I mention that and give him credit even though he's gone now, I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget to mention his name in this video. Deep dives and rankings of album, pop culture discussion, classic old school wrestling, some drums, and whatever the hell I feel like. So if you enjoy any of that sort of stuff, if you like podcasts by Rick Beato, Three Sides of the Coin, The Contrarians, Billy Corgan, stuff like that, please check out my channel, Tom Stewart Drums on YouTube, and subscribe. I hope to see you there.